This is Bex with Pour Paint Now. This is the first in our series of basic pour painting techniques. It is known as the straight pour or the direct pour because you pour the paints directly onto the canvas. I know that sounds like an odd thing, but there are other techniques where you do things to the paint before you actually pour it on the canvas. But this is one where you are creating your painting just directly from pouring from your container onto your canvas. And today I'm going to be using our Smart Start Art Kit with the Fire Collection. And these will be going over a black base coat. They're all in the Deco Art, Fluid Art Ready to Pour acrylic paints. If you need information about the paint itself, what's in it, any sort of information about that, you can go to Deco Art's website. I will be, these are the containers if you buy a Smart Start Art Kit. This is the containers that your paint comes in. There's always the larger one that has the base coat because that's the one you'll need the most of, that particular color. And then you'll get sort of half containers of these other ones. So 2 ounces of your base coat, 1 ounce each of your color coat should be more than enough to cover your 8x10 canvas. I will be pouring actually directly from my bottles, but there's nothing different about that. So, we've got our protective gear on. Again, I usually start with the paints on one side, canvas in the middle, my trash and clean up stuff over on the other side. When I get done, stuff just goes over here. If I'm done with the paints, then they just sit over here out of the way. That's my preferred technique. You find out what works for you. But we will start with our base coat, which in this case is going to be black. Going with our base coat. If you'll notice, your canvas has lots of little ridges on there. It's very dry. The paint will not flow very well when you get to your colors. So it's always important to put down a base coat. Some people call it a pillow coat. It will help the paint, when you want it to flow, to move more smoothly. And you'll see a big difference in that between when I put on this base coat and when I put the other colors on. You can start anywhere you want. A lot of people start in the middle, pour out to the sides. Some people start to the corners, start in one edge, however you want to do. I sort of like to just kind of get it all around. And then start letting it flow on its own. Again, if you get one of the kits, you'll have about 2 ounces of paint, which should be more than enough to cover it. This is an 8-ounce bottle. And you see the paint kind of sits still. So you want to tilt it. This is one of those times when you can take something like a spatula, or in the case of our kits, we have the little stir stick. You can just kind of get it moving along to get that even coating. So you see, it didn't look like a whole lot, but when you start pushing it with the stick, it actually turns out to be quite a bit. You want to make sure that you get all the way to the edges. Again, so when you get to the color portion, it's going to flow nicely. In the background is my dog Boudreaux. You will hear him from time to time. He comes out and hangs in the basement studio with me, or stays upstairs with my husband and sleeps. And that's him running up the stairs. So we've got this pretty well covered. We're trying to get our edges. If you bake, it's kind of like frosting a cake. Just kind of want to make sure that's all over there. If you don't get every spot on the sides, that's fine, because you're going to have excess from what you're doing. If you're doing the kits, you should have, like I said, plenty to do this and maybe a little extra. And you can always come back at the very end, even after overnight, if you've got a little extra. Like I say, make sure and put your lid on. And you can do touch-ups after you get done. And so right now it looks kind of spotty as far as texture. That's going to be fine because we're going to add more paints on top and it's going to self-level. And that's also part of the drying time, is for it to do that. So put a little back on our paint. I don't want to get black on everything, so I'm going to kind of wipe that off. All right, so the two hardest parts of any painting are starting and stopping. It's always, at least I find, it's always a challenge for me to figure out what I want to do with the paints, as far as what color I want to start with and where I want to put them on the canvas. It really doesn't matter. You shouldn't don't let it stop you, because it's going to do what it does. And part of the joy of pour painting is the painting that develops in the moment. And you might think, oh, this is cool. And then you start tilting there, like, oh, wait, no, this is doing something different. You will see. So we're going to start with, I think, the red. And I usually do try and alternate between a darker color or a richer color and a paler color. One thing you can do if you're looking at the paints is to take a picture, and then in your phone, because I'm assuming everybody uses their phone for pictures, is to go into the filters and turn it into black and white. And then you can really see the difference. If you have good contrast between, say, two darker colors and two lighter colors, then the painting is really going to pop. The colors are really going to burst, and you're going to get a really nice effect. If they're too much alike, they can just sort of become bland. If they are too opposite, as far as like red and green, don't necessarily go well together, because they have a tendency to blend and turn into brown, what we call muddying the painting. So, but we're just going to go, and I'm just going to start doing stuff. And I know it looks like I'm not doing anything, and I'm not. I'm just putting paint on the canvas. This is just getting you used to putting this on, developing your eye. So let me reclose those so we don't have any spills. And there's no rules. It doesn't have to be lines. It could just be puddles. You could just do puddles of color and let them all blend in together. We're going to go in some of the other techniques that you can have in some of our later series, where you start with something like this and then you manipulate it. You go in and you might go with a comb, or you might do what's called a swipe, which is where you pull the a wet paper towel across it. Again, these are all different things that you can do. I'm actually going to go back, throw a little more black on top. And maybe some more red. Oh, that's orange. Well, okay, orange wants to go next. We'll let it go. So, I know you're thinking, that is a hot mess. Well, it is fire. You'll get used to the corny jokes. So now we start tilting. And you'll see the colors start to move and blend and interact as we do them in different directions. This is the best part. This is where stuff, I can see some bubbles in my orange, but this is where the magic happens. Especially with some of the other techniques, you'll see things start to blend even more. All right, so you can see the drips coming off. Which again, that's why we want to have the pan and the puppy pads, because actually corners of this are off of the pan. So this. Again, this is why it's important to have the full coverage on the black so that stuff will slide kind of on its own. So it's looking very 70s psychedelic to me, which I'm kind of liking. As I said, the second hardest part of any painting is stopping. Realize when you kind of got what you want. You've got an interesting design going. I love the sides. That's one thing. We see things starting to wrap around and you get really interesting stuff looking. And you also notice that, as I said before, where you had sort of lumps and bumps and different textures starting out, now that we've got the other colors on, the paint itself is really smoothed out. I'm sorry if you're just kind of looking at an odd angle there, but I'm trying to get it to come down some. I can see this corner nearest me. Actually, it does have a little bare spot on it, but we will fix that. I like where it's at. So I'm actually going to stop. Some people will be, that's the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen. Why would anybody do that? Other people will be like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I immediately want to do this. And I have mixed feelings about my paintings a lot of times. Sometimes I'll start with something and I get it to a certain point and be like, I don't know about that one. And then I will do it again and, come back to it in several months' time and then be like, oh no, I really kind of like what that turned out. And the great thing about abstract is you try looking at it at different angles, it's like maybe I like it more like this. I think I'm kind of liking it like this because I love like this little swirl that's happening there. I love that sort of thing that's happening. Gosh, I do have bubbles in my paint. Meh. And that's it. Like I said, once you get to a point where you feel like you're getting towards the end, just stop. Just stop for a minute. Just a few seconds and just look at it and see, is there something that you want to, I want that to stretch a little bit more. Do I feel like I want to add more of a color? You can always kind of go in and do things, but don't have expectations. Don't think, oh, it's got to look exactly like this or exactly like that. Because that's where the magic happens, is when you kind of don't expect anything. Again, taking our gloves off so we don't get our hands and paint on everything. And that is it for the straight pour. That is the basic technique, just getting you used to putting paint on canvas. Because you will always, I will say, you will always at least do that first level, which is a straight pour. Is putting your base coat on there. Join me next time and we will go through another technique. And I thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that you take the plunge and try this for yourself. Thank you.